Clara spent every waking moment studying the artifact. The more she uncovered, the clearer it became that humanity's story was both beautiful and tragic. Through the crystal, she saw glimpses of Earth in its prime vast oceans reflecting sunlight, forests alive with color, and cities bustling with activity. She marveled at how humans had created such intricate structures and machines, yet their world seemed fragile, as if it could break under the weight of its own progress. One day, while analyzing a new set of data from the artifact, Clara stumbled upon something unexpected. It wasn't just images or sounds this time. It was a recording of a speech. A man stood on a stage, his face lined with worry but his voice steady. "We have reached a tipping point," he said, addressing the crowd. "Our planet is struggling to keep up with what we demand of it. If we don't act now, there may not be a tomorrow for us or for those who come after." The words struck Clara deeply. She imagined the fear and desperation these people must have felt, knowing their time was running out. Yet, even in their darkest moments, they hadn't given up. They had worked tirelessly to preserve their story, hoping someone else might learn from their mistakes. Kale joined her in the lab later that evening, carrying a tray of food. He noticed the intensity in her expression and set the tray down beside her. "What did you find?" he asked, pulling up a chair. Clara turned to him, her eyes wide with excitement and sadness. "Listen to this," she said, replaying the speech. As the man's voice filled the room, Kale leaned forward, listening intently. When the recording ended, he sat back, silent for a moment. "They knew," he finally said. "They saw what was coming, and they tried to stop it." "But they couldn't," Clara replied softly. "That's the hardest part. They had the knowledge, the tools, and even the will to change, but something stopped them." Kale frowned. "Do you think it was too late by then? Or do you think they chose not to act?" Clara hesitated. She didn't want to believe that anyone would knowingly destroy their own home, but the evidence suggested otherwise. Humanity had been warned repeatedly about the consequences of their actions' rising temperatures, shrinking habitats, dwindling resources, but they had ignored the signs for far too long. Only when disaster struck did they scramble to fix what they had broken, and by then, it was already too late. As days passed, Clara and Kale continued piecing together fragments of humanity's history. They learned about wars fought over land and power, about industries that polluted the air and water, and about leaders who prioritized profit over preservation. But they also discovered moments of hope, movements led by ordinary people determined to make a difference, inventions designed to heal rather than harm, and communities coming together to protect what little remained. One recording stood out. Among the rest, it featured a woman named Emily speaking directly into a camera. Her voice was calm but firm. "If future generations look back on us, I hope they see that we tried. We made mistakes, yes, but we never stopped trying to build a better world." To whoever finds this message, please remember, you still have time. Don't wait until it's too late. Emily's words resonated with Clara. She felt a deep connection to this woman she had never met, separated by thousands of years and countless light years. It was as if Emily were speaking directly to her, urging her to take action before it was too late. Word of the artifact spread quickly among the Valens. At first, only a handful of scientists and historians took an interest, but soon others began asking questions. What was this mysterious object? Who were the beings who created it? And why had they sent their message across the stars? The council, which governed the Valen society, called a meeting to discuss the discovery. Clara and Kale were invited to present their findings. Standing before the council members, Clara held up the crystal, its faint glow casting shadows on the walls. "This artifact belongs to a civilization called humanity," she explained. "They lived on a planet called Earth, which no longer exists. Before they disappeared, they left behind this message, a warning and a plea for help." Murmurs rippled through the room. Some council members nodded thoughtfully, while others looked skeptical. One of them, a stern older man named Loris, raised his hand to speak. Why should we care about a civilization that failed? He asked. Bluntly, their problems are not ours. Focusing on their mistakes will only distract us from our own challenges. Clara bristled at his words. Because their problems became ours. She shot back, surprising even herself with her boldness. Look at what happened to Earth. Their greed and neglect destroyed their planet. If we don't learn from their example, we risk making the same mistakes. Loris narrowed his eyes but said nothing. The tension in the room was palpable. After a long pause, another council member, a younger woman named Ava, spoke up. Clara makes a valid point, she said. Ignoring their message won't protect us. Understanding it might. The council decided to allow Clara and Kale to continue their research, though under strict supervision. Loris remained opposed to the project, but for now, he kept his objections quiet. Back in the lab, Clara pored over the artifact with renewed determination. She enlisted the help of Liam, a brilliant engineer known for his innovative ideas. Together, they began decoding additional layers of information hidden within the crystal. As they worked, they uncovered shocking parallels between Earth's trajectory and their own planet's current state. Vela, their homeworld, was facing environmental challenges of its own. Though nowhere near as dire as Earth had been, the signs were there: shrinking forests, rising temperatures, and dwindling water supplies. Many dismissed these issues as minor inconveniences, but Clara and Liam saw them for what they truly were: warnings. This is why humanity's message matters, Clara told Liam one night as they pored over diagrams and charts. It's not just about remembering them. It's about saving ourselves. Liam nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. If we can understand how they failed, maybe we can figure out how to succeed. Their collaboration deepened as they delved further into the artifact's secrets. Each new discovery brought fresh insights and fresh fears. The more they learned about humanity, the more they realized how close their own society was to repeating. One evening, as they worked late into the night, Clara paused to look out the window. The moons hung low in the sky, casting silvery light across the landscape. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what Earth might have looked like in its final days. Half the humans gazed at their own moon, wondering if anyone out there would hear their cry for help. We're listening, she whispered, almost to herself. And we won't let your story end here. 40,000 years had passed since Earth disappeared. The blue planet, once full of life and energy, was now just a memory, a faint echo lost in the vastness of space. Humanity, with all its dreams, struggles, and achievements, had vanished. But before the end came, they left something behind. It wasn't a weapon or a monument. It was a message sent into the endless void of the universe, hoping that someone, somewhere, would hear it. On a distant moon orbiting a dim, dying star, an alien named Kale stumbled upon something strange. He was part of a species called the Valens, known for their curiosity about ancient civilizations. They spent centuries exploring ruins, digging through layers of time to uncover stories of those who came before them. Kale was no different. He loved the thrill of discovery, the idea that he might find something no one else had seen. That day, Kale was searching through a barren landscape covered in gray rocks and icy patches. The air was thin, and the ground was cold beneath his feet. As he walked, his scanner beeped softly, signaling that something unusual lay buried below. Kale bent down and began clearing away the dirt and ice with his hands. Slowly, a small object emerged from the frozen earth. It was smooth, crystalline, and glowed faintly when he touched it. Kale's heart raced. He had never seen anything like it. The crystal was etched with symbols, lines, and curves that didn't match any language he knew. Carefully, he picked it up and examined it more closely. At first, nothing happened. Then, as if sensing his presence, the crystal came to life. A soft hum filled the air, and suddenly, a voice spoke. Remember us? The words were clear, simple, and spoken in a tone that carried both sadness and hope. Kale froze, staring at the crystal in disbelief. Who were us? And why did this message feel so urgent? He turned the object over in his hands, trying to understand what it was and where it had come from. There was no doubt in his mind. It was old, far older than anything he had ever encountered. Kale decided to take the crystal back to his people. When he returned to the Valen settlement, he showed the artifact to Clara, a young historian who specialized in studying extant civilizations. Clara was fascinated by the mysterious object. She had spent her life learning about cultures that no longer existed, piecing together fragments of their stories. This crystal, she realized, could be the key to understanding an entirely new chapter of history. Together, Kale and Clara began examining the artifact. They quickly discovered that it contained more than just a single phrase. Embedded within the crystal were fragments of information, images, sounds, and even pieces of text. These fragments painted a picture of a world unlike anything the Valens had ever imagined. Through the images, they saw towering cities made of metal and glass, sprawling forests filled with strange animals, and vast oceans shimmering under bright sunlight. They heard music, strange melodies played on instruments they couldn't identify, and laughter, which seemed oddly familiar despite being so alien. Most importantly, they listened to recordings of voices. One voice stood out above the rest. It belonged to a man named Daniel. "If you're hearing this," Daniel said, his tone calm but tinged with regret, "then we failed. We couldn't save ourselves, but maybe our story can help you avoid the same fate." Clara felt a chill run down her spine. She replayed the recording multiple times, each word sinking deeper into her mind. What had happened to these people? Why had they failed? And what exactly was their story? As days turned into weeks, Clara became obsessed with unraveling the mystery. She spent hours poring over the data stored in the crystal, analyzing every detail. With Kale's help, she began piecing together the fragments of this long-lost civilization. They learned about humanity, their creativity, their resilience, and their capacity for both greatness and destruction. They also learned about Earth itself, a planet teeming with life and beauty. Until it wasn't anymore. Kale watched Clara work with a mix of admiration and concern. He admired her passion and determination. But he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something dangerous about this artifact. The message it carried wasn't just a plea to remember. It was a warning. A warning of what? Kale wasn't sure, but he knew it couldn't be ignored. One evening, as they sat together in the lab, Clara looked up from her notes and sighed. "Do you think we'll ever fully understand them?" she asked. Kale hesitated before answering. "I don't." "No," he admitted. "But I do know one thing: they wanted us to listen. Whatever they left behind, it's important." Clara nodded, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the crystal. "They gave us their story," she said quietly. "And I think it's our responsibility to honor that." As the two of them continued their work, they couldn't have known how much this discovery would change not only their lives, but the future of their entire species. For now, though, they focused on the task at hand, understanding the message of a civilization long gone and ensuring that its voice would not fade into silence again. As Clara and Liam worked tirelessly to decode the artifact, they began noticing patterns in the data. The crystal wasn't just a repository of images and sounds, it was also a map of Earth's downfall. Through fragmented recordings and diagrams, they pieced together a timeline of events that led to humanity's extinction. Each discovery painted a clearer picture, but it also deepened their unease. One evening, while examining a series of graphs stored within the artifact, Liam pointed out something alarming. "Look at this," he said, turning the screen toward Clara. It showed a sharp rise in Earth's temperatures over several centuries. Alongside the graph were notes about melting ice caps, rising sea levels, and extreme weather events. "This is what happened when they ignored the warnings," Liam added, his voice heavy with concern. Clara leaned closer, studying the details. "It's like they were racing against time, but didn't realize how fast the clock was ticking," she murmured. She thought about Vela, their own planet, and the subtle changes it had been experiencing. Droughts were becoming more frequent. Certain species of plants and animals were disappearing, and storms seemed fiercer than before. Could Vela be heading down the same path as Earth? The parallels between the two planets weighed heavily on Clara's mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that the artifact wasn't just a relic of the past, it was a mirror reflecting their present. If they didn't act soon, Vela could share Earth's fate. Kale visited the lab the next day, bringing news that only added to their growing sense of urgency. Rumors about the artifact had spread beyond the council chambers and into the streets. Some Valens saw it as a fascinating glimpse into an ancient civilization, while others viewed it as a threat. Loris, the council member who had opposed Clara's work from the start, was leading a campaign to shut down the project entirely. He's telling everyone the artifact is dangerous, Kale explained, pacing back and forth. He says focusing on humanity's failures will weaken us, make us doubt our own progress. Clara sighed, rubbing her temples. He doesn't understand. This isn't about fear, it's about learning. Humanity gave us a gift. They showed. Use what can happen if we don't take care of our world. Kale stopped pacing and looked at her. But gifts can be misinterpreted. What happens if people see this message as a prophecy instead of a warning? Clara knew he had a point. Misunderstanding the artifact's purpose could lead to panic or even rebellion. Yet abandoning their research felt unthinkable. Every piece of information they uncovered brought them closer to understanding how to prevent Vela's decline. They couldn't stop now, not when so much was at stake. Determined to push forward, Clara and Liam decided to focus on one specific aspect of the artifact, its technology. Embedded within the crystal were blueprints for devices unlike anything the Valens had ever seen. These designs hinted at solutions to problems humanity had faced: clean energy sources, efficient waste management systems, and methods for repairing damaged ecosystems. Liam spent hours analyzing the blueprints, his excitement growing with each new revelation. These designs are incredible, he told Clara one afternoon, pointing to a schematic on the screen. If we can replicate this, we might be able to reverse some of the damage here on Vela. Clara nodded, though her expression remained cautious. We need to be careful. Just because we can build, it doesn't mean we should. Remember what happened to humanity? They created amazing things, but they used them recklessly. You're right, Liam admitted. But if we approach this carefully, maybe we can avoid their mistakes. Their conversation was interrupted by a loud knock at the door. Before they could respond, it swung open, revealing a group of guards accompanied by Loris himself. His stern face betrayed no emotion as he stepped inside. This ends now, he declared, gesturing to the guards. The council has ordered the artifact confiscated. Your research poses too great a risk to our society. Clara stood up, her heart pounding. You can't do this. We're close to finding answers that could save Vela. Loris shook his head. You've already caused enough trouble. People are scared, confused. They don't need reminders of failure day. Need hope. It is hope, Clara insisted, stepping between him and the artifact. Humanity gave us a chance to learn from their mistakes. Don't throw that away. For a moment, tension filled the room. Then Kale stepped forward, placing a hand on Clara's shoulder. Let them take it, he said quietly, but not without a fight. Reluctantly, Clara stepped aside, watching as the guards carefully placed the artifact in a secure container. As they carried it away, Loris turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. Remember this, he said, his tone icy. Sometimes looking back only holds us back. Once they were gone, Clara sank into her chair, frustration bubbling inside. How can he not see? She muttered, staring at the empty space where the artifact had been. This isn't just about the past, it's about our future. Liam placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We still have the knowledge we've gathered. That's something they can't take away. Clara nodded slowly, determination flickering in her eyes. Then we keep going. without the artifact, if we have to. Over the next few days, Claire and Liam worked from memory, reconstructing as much of the data as they could. They sketched diagrams, wrote notes, and brainstormed ways to apply humanity's lessons to Vela's challenges. Though progress was slower without the artifact, their resolve never wavered. One night, as they pored over their makeshift plans, Clara noticed something strange. A faint glow emanated from the corner of the lab. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light, but then she realized it was coming from a small shard of the crystal. Somehow, a fragment had broken off during the confiscation and remained hidden in the lab. Clara picked up the shard, her hands trembling. When she touched it, the glow intensified, and a single phrase echoed softly in her mind. "It's not too late." Tears welled up in her eyes as she clutched the shard tightly. It was a message, a reminder that humanity's story wasn't just a tale of loss. It was a call to action, a plea to seize the opportunity they had been given. "We'll make sure." "It's not too late," she whispered, showing the shard to Liam. "For Earth, for humanity, and for Vela." Together, they vowed to continue their work, no matter the obstacles ahead. The road would be difficult, but they were ready to face it. After all, humanity had entrusted them with more than just memories. They had given them a second chance. Clara and Liam knew they were running out of time. The shard of the crystal, though small, was their lifeline, a fragile thread connecting them to humanity's message. They worked in secret now, hiding their efforts from prying eyes. The lab had become their sanctuary, a place where they could focus on decoding the shard's remaining fragments without fear of interruption. But secrecy came at a cost. Supplies dwindled, sleepless nights piled up, and the weight of their mission pressed heavily on their shoulders. The shard revealed more than just images or sounds. It contained detailed instructions for building devices that could harness clean energy. These designs were revolutionary, far beyond anything the Valens had ever imagined. Clara and Liam realized that if they could recreate even one of these inventions, it could change everything. It could slow the damage to Vela's environment and give their people a fighting chance. But there was a problem. The blueprints were incomplete. Some parts of the shard's data were corrupted, leaving gaps in the instructions. Without the full artifact, they had no way to fill in the missing pieces. Frustration mounted as they tried again and again to piece together the puzzle. Each failed attempt felt like a step backward, and doubts began creeping into their minds. One evening, as they sat surrounded by scattered notes and half-finished sketches, Liam broke the silence. "What if we're wrong about this?" he asked, his voice low. "What if trying to rebuild their technology is just another mistake?" Clara looked at him, startled by the question. "We don't have a choice," she replied firmly. "If we do nothing, Vela will keep heading down the same path as Earth. At least this gives us a chance." Liam sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know. I keep thinking about what Laura said. What if we're playing with something we don't fully understand?" Clara hesitated. She had thought about that too, the risk of misusing the knowledge they'd uncovered. But giving up wasn't an option. Humanity hadn't left behind their message to be ignored. "We'll take it step by step," she said finally. "We won't rush. We'll test every part before moving forward. That's how we'll avoid making the same mistakes." Her words seemed to reassure Liam, at least for the moment. They returned to their work, determined to push through the challenges. Slowly, painstakingly, they began assembling a prototype based on the shard's designs. It was a small device, meant to generate energy using principles unlike anything they'd seen before. If it worked, it would prove that humanity's gift could still make a difference. As days turned into weeks, news of their defiance spread through whispers among the Valens. Some admired Clara and Liam's courage, while others sided with Loris, believing their actions were reckless. Tensions rose within the community, dividing friends and families. Even Kale, who had supported them at first, grew conflicted. He visited the lab one night, his face lined with worry. "You're stirring up trouble," he said bluntly, pacing back and forth. People are talking. Some say you're heroes. Others call you fools. Clara didn't look up from her work. Let them talk, she said evenly. We're not doing this for them. We're doing it for Vela. Kale stopped pacing and stared at her. And what happens when things go wrong? When someone gets hurt because of your experiments? They won't, Liam interjected, stepping forward. We're being careful. Every step is calculated. Kale shook his head. You can't predict everything. You're playing with forces you barely understand. His words lingered in the air long after he left. Clara and Liam exchanged uneasy glances but said nothing. Deep down, they knew Kale had a point. Their work was risky, and failure could have serious consequences. But they also knew that doing nothing carried its own risks. Finally, after months of effort, the prototype was ready. It was a modest machine, no larger than a table, with wires and circuits arranged in intricate patterns. Claire and Liam stood. Beside it, their hearts racing as they prepared to activate it for the first time. The room fell silent, except for the soft hum of the device powering up for a moment. Nothing happened. Then slowly, a soft glow emanated from the center of the machine. Energy crackled in the air, warm and steady. Clara held her breath, watching as the readings on their instruments climbed higher and higher. The prototype was working. It was. Generating clean, sustainable energy. It's real, Liam whispered, his voice trembling with awe. It actually works. Clara felt tears welling up in her eyes. All their hard work, all their sacrifices had paid off. For the first time in months, hope filled the room. This was proof that humanity's legacy could still inspire change. Even 40,000 years later, but their triumph was short-lived. Just as they were celebrating, alarms blared outside the lab. Footsteps echoed in the hallway, growing louder with each passing second. Clara and Liam exchanged panicked looks. Someone had found them. The door burst open, and guards flooded into the room. Behind them stood Loris, his expression grim. You've gone too far, he said, gesturing to the prototype. This ends now. Clara stepped forward, shielding the machine with her body. You don't understand what this is, she pleaded. It's not dangerous. It's a solution, a way to save Vela. Loris shook his head. It's a threat. You're tampering with forces beyond your control. The council won't allow it. Before Clara could argue further, Kale appeared. At the doorway, his face was pale, his hands clenched into fists. Take me instead, he said suddenly, stepping between the guards and the lab. I helped them. Punish me if you must, but let them finish their work. Everyone froze, stunned by his words. Clara stared at him, her heart breaking at the realization of what he was willing to sacrifice. Kale, no. She began, but he cut her off with a firm shake of his head. I believe in what you're doing, he said quietly. But you need more time. Let me buy it for you. Tears streamed down Clara's face as the guard seized Kale and dragged him away. The room felt empty without him, the weight of his sacrifice pressing down on her chest. But there was no time to grieve. Loris gave her and Liam one last warning before leaving with his guards. Destroy the prototype, he ordered. Or I'll send someone back to do it for you. Once they were alone, Clara sank to her knees, overwhelmed by exhaustion and despair. Liam knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. We can't give up, he said firmly. Not after everything we've been through. Not after what Kale did for us. Clara nodded, wiping her tears. Kale had given them a chance, and they couldn't waste it. Together, they dismantled the prototype, hiding its components in different parts of the lab. Then, under the cover of darkness, they slipped away, carrying the shard and whatever supplies they could gather. Their journey took them to a remote outpost on the edge of Valen territory, a place few dared to visit. There, they set up a new base of operations, determined to continue their work in secret. Though the road ahead was uncertain, they clung to the hope that humanity's message could still guide them toward a brighter future. As they unpacked their equipment and began rebuilding the prototype. Clara held the shard tightly in her hand. Its faint glow reminded her of Kale's bravery and humanity's enduring spirit. "We'll make this right," she whispered, her voice steady despite the ache in her heart. "For Kale, for Earth, and for Vela. N." Clara and Liam worked tirelessly at the remote outpost, their days blending into nights as they pieced together the dismantled prototype. The small, hidden facility was far from ideal. Cold winds howled outside, and supplies were scarce, but it gave them the privacy they needed to continue their mission. Every day felt like a race against time, not just because of the growing environmental challenges on Vela, but also because they knew Loris and his allies would eventually find them. The shard of the crystal remained their most valuable tool. Its faint glow seemed to pulse with life, guiding them through the gaps in the blueprints. Clara often found herself staring at it, marveling at its resilience. Despite being broken and incomplete, it still held fragments of humanity's knowledge, waiting to be unlocked. She couldn't help but feel a deep connection to those who had created it, as if their determination lived on through the artifact. One evening, while testing a new component of the prototype, Liam paused and looked at Clara. "Do you ever wonder what they were like?" he asked, his voice soft. "The humans, I mean." Clara nodded, setting down her tools. "All the time," she admitted. "They weren't so different from us, you know. They loved, they fought, they dreamed, but they also made mistakes. Big ones." Liam leaned back in his chair, gazing at the ceiling. "I wonder if they thought about us, about anyone out there, listening." "They must have," Clara replied. "Why else would they send this message?" It wasn't just for themselves, it was for everyone who came after them. The conversation lingered between them, filling the silence as they returned to their work. Each step forward brought them closer to completing the prototype, but it also reminded them of the stakes. If they succeeded, they could change the course of Vela's future. If they failed, the consequences could be catastrophic. News of their defiance spread even to the remote outpost. One day, a group of travelers arrived seeking shelter from a storm. Among them was a young woman named Ava, who had once supported Clara's research before the council shut it down. When she recognized Clara and Liam, her eyes widened in surprise. "I heard rumors you were still working on the project," Ava said, pulling them aside after the others had settled in. "Is it true?" Clara hesitated, unsure whether to trust her. But something in Ava's earnest expression reassured her. "Yes," she admitted. "We're trying to finish what we started." Ava nodded, glancing over her shoulder to make sure no one was listening. "You're not alone," she whispered. "There are others who believe in what you're doing. People who want to help." Hope flickered in Clara's chest. For months, she and Liam had felt isolated, carrying the weight of their mission alone. The idea that others shared their vision was both comforting and empowering. "We need all the help we can get," she said finally. Over the next few days, Ava introduced them to a network of supporters scattered across Vela. These individuals, though few in number, were willing to risk everything to aid Clara and Liam's cause. Some smuggled supplies to the outpost, while others acted as messengers, spreading word of their progress. Slowly, a movement began to take shape, a quiet rebellion fueled by the belief that humanity's message could still inspire change. But with every victory came new challenges. Supplies were still limited, and the prototype required materials that were difficult to obtain. Worse, Loris's influence continued to grow. His warnings about the dangers of pursuing humanity's technology resonated with many, especially those who feared the unknown. Clara and Liam knew it was only a matter of time before he discovered their location. One night, as they worked late into the early hours, a loud crash echoed through the outpost. Clara and Liam froze, their hearts pounding. Footsteps followed, heavy and deliberate. "Someone was here. Stay behind me," Liam whispered, grabbing a makeshift weapon, a metal rod from the workbench. Clara clutched the shard tightly, its glow dimming as if sensing the danger. The door burst open, and several armed guards stormed in, led by none other than Loris himself. His face was grim, his eyes blazing with anger. "This ends now," he declared, gesturing for his men to seize the prototype. Clara stepped forward, her voice trembling but defiant. "You don't understand what this is. It's not a threat. It's a solution." "It's a risk we can't afford," Loris shot back. "You've already caused enough chaos. Hand it over." Before Clara could respond, a commotion erupted outside. Shouts and the sound of scuffling filled the air. Moments later, Kale appeared in the doorway, battered but alive. Behind him stood a group of rebels, including Ava, armed with whatever weapons they could gather. "You won't touch them," Kale said, his voice firm despite his injuries. "Not while we're here." Loris sneered, motioning for his guards to attack. Chaos broke out as the two groups clashed, the narrow confines of the outpost amplifying the noise. Clara and Liam used the distraction to grab the prototype and retreat deeper into the facility, shielding it from harm. When the fighting finally subsided, Loris and his men retreated, leaving the rebels victorious but exhausted. Kale collapsed onto the floor, blood staining his side. Clara rushed to his side, tears streaming down her face. "Why did you come back?" she asked, her voice breaking. Kale managed a weak smile. "Because I believe in you," he said. "In all of this. Don't stop now." Inspired by his sacrifice and the bravery of their allies, Clara and Liam redoubled their efforts. With the help of the rebels, they completed the prototype, testing it repeatedly until they were confident in its stability. It was ready, not just as a source of clean energy, but as proof that humanity's legacy could still guide them toward a better future. As the first rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, casting a golden glow over the outpost, Clara stood beside the humming machine, the shard glowing softly in her hand. "It's not too late," she whispered, echoing the words that had guided her since the beginning. For Earth, for Kale, and for Vela. The prototype was ready, but Clara and Liam knew their work was far from over. The machine hummed softly in the corner of the outpost, a testament to their months of struggle and sacrifice. It was more than just a device. It was a symbol of hope, a reminder that humanity's message could still inspire change. But getting it into the hands of those who needed it most would be no easy task. Word of their success spread quickly among the rebels. Ava arrived at the outpost the next morning, her face flushed with excitement. "People are talking," she said breathlessly. "They've heard about the prototype. They want to see it for themselves." Clara frowned, uneasy about drawing too much attention. "We can't just show it off," she said. "It's not ready for widespread use yet. If we make one mistake, it could ruin everything." Ava nodded, understanding the risks. "But you need support," she countered. "If people don't believe in what you're doing, Loris will win. He's already spreading lies about you, saying you're reckless and dangerous." Liam stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe there's a way to prove him wrong." He suggested, "If we demonstrate the prototype on a small scale just enough to show its potential, we might be able to sway public opinion." Clara hesitated. She hated the idea of putting the prototype on display, especially when so much was at stake. But she also knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. If they wanted to make a real difference, they had to take a leap of faith. With Kale recovering slowly from his injuries, the group devised a plan. They would travel to a nearby settlement, a small community struggling with energy shortages, and offer to help. The settlement wasn't far from the outpost, making it easier to transport the prototype without attracting too much attention. More importantly, it was a place where the benefits of clean energy could be seen and felt immediately. The journey was tense. Clara, Liam, and a handful of rebels loaded the prototype onto a cart and set out under the cover of darkness. Kale insisted on joining them despite his wounds, arguing that his presence would lend credibility to their cause. "If I'm going to risk my life for this," he said firmly, "I want to see it through." When they arrived at the settlement, they were greeted with cautious curiosity. The villagers gathered around, whispering among themselves as Clara explained the purpose of their visit. "This machine generates clean energy," she said, motioning to the prototype. "It's safe, efficient, and sustainable. We'd like to show you how it works." At first, skepticism filled the air. Many villagers had heard Loris's warnings and feared the unknown. But as Clara and Liam powered up the prototype, its soft hum silencing the doubts in the crowd, something shifted. Lights flickered on, brighter and steadier than anything the villagers had seen before. Machines that had been dormant for years sprang to life, their gears turning smoothly. One woman stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "My son has been sick," she said, her voice trembling. "The old generators polluted the air, but this is different. It's clean." Others began sharing their own stories of crops failing due to contaminated water, of children suffering from illnesses caused by pollution. Slowly, the tide turned. The villagers saw the prototype not as a threat, but as a lifeline. By the end of the demonstration, cheers erupted, echoing across the settlement. News of the successful trial spread faster than anyone expected. Within days, reports reached other communities, sparking interest and curiosity. People began traveling to the settlement to see the prototype for themselves. Some came out of desperation, others out of hope, but all left inspired. Loris, however, was furious. When word of the demonstration reached him, he called an emergency meeting of the council. "They're undermining our authority," he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "If we don't act now, they'll destroy everything we've built." His anger only fueled the growing movement. Ava and the rebels worked tirelessly to organize support, holding meetings and rallies to educate others about the prototype and its potential. Clara and Liam became symbols of resistance, their names whispered with admiration and gratitude. But the pressure took its toll. Clara often found herself lying awake at night, replaying every decision, every risk, wondering if they were doing the right thing. One evening, as she sat alone outside the outpost, staring at the stars, Kale joined her. His recovery was slow, but he was determined to stay by her side. "You look tired," he said gently, sitting beside her. "I am," Clara admitted. "I keep thinking about Earth, about whether we're really learning from their mistakes or just repeating them." Kale was silent for a moment, gazing at the horizon. "You can't save everyone," he said finally. "But you're giving people a chance. That's more than most ever try to do." Clara smiled faintly, grateful for his words. "Do you think it's enough?" "It has to be," Kale replied, "because giving up isn't an option." As the weeks passed, the movement gained momentum. More settlements adopted the prototype, adapting it to meet their needs. The rebels worked to refine the design, making it easier to replicate and distribute. Each success brought them closer to their goal, but also closer to confrontation with Loris and his supporters. One day a messenger arrived at the outpost with urgent news. Loris was planning a large-scale operation to seize the prototype and dismantle the movement once and for all. He had rallied the council and its forces, intent on crushing any opposition. Clara and Liam called an emergency meeting with the rebels. "This is it," Clara said, her voice steady despite the fear in her heart. "If we stand together, we can stop him. But if we falter, everything we've worked for will be lost." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Then, one by one, the rebels stood, pledging their support. "We're with you," Ava said firmly. "To the end." Preparations began immediately. The rebels fortified the outpost, setting traps and gathering supplies. Clara and Liam worked around the clock to ensure the prototype was safe, knowing it was the key to their survival. As dawn broke on the day of the attack, they stood shoulder to shoulder, ready to defend what they had built. The battle was fierce, testing every ounce of courage and determination they had. But in the end, it wasn't brute force that won the day, it was unity. Inspired by Clara and Liam's vision, ordinary people rose up, refusing to let fear dictate their future. When the dust settled, Loris and his forces retreated, their resolve broken. The council, swayed by the overwhelming support for the prototype, agreed to reconsider their stance. For the first time in years, hope filled the air. Clara stood amidst the wreckage, clutching the shard tightly in her hand. Its glow seemed brighter, now a beacon of perseverance and possibility. "We did it," Liam said, placing a hand on her shoulder. Clara nodded, tears streaming down her face. "No," she corrected softly. "We're just beginning." Months passed, and the impact of Clara and Liam's work began to ripple across Vela. The prototype they had built became the foundation for a new way of life. Settlements that once struggled with polluted air, contaminated water, and dwindling resources now thrived under the power of clean energy. The rebels, who had once been a scattered group of outcasts, transformed into leaders guiding their communities toward a brighter future. The council, faced with undeniable evidence of the prototype's success, finally relented. Loris remained bitter, but his influence waned as more people embraced the changes brought by Clara and Liam's vision. Ava was appointed as a liaison between the council and the growing movement, ensuring that decisions were made with the planet's health in mind. Slowly, the old ways of thinking began to fade, replaced by a collective commitment to sustainability and progress. Clara and Liam continued refining the prototype, sharing its design with anyone willing to learn. They traveled from settlement to settlement, teaching others how to build and maintain the machines. Each community added its own innovations, adapting the technology to suit local needs. What had started as a single invention blossomed into a network of solutions, each one inspired by humanity's message. Kale, though still recovering from his injuries, accompanied them whenever he could. His presence served as a reminder of the sacrifices that had paved the way for change. "You've done more than anyone thought possible," he told Claire one evening as they sat together under the stars. "But don't forget why we started." "This," Clara smiled, her gaze fixed on the shard glowing faintly in her hand. "To remember," she said softly, "to learn, to hope." As time went on, stories of Earth began to spread among the Valens. The recordings stored in the artifact, voices, music, laughter were shared widely, not as relics of a lost civilization, but as lessons for the living. People marveled at humanity's creativity and resilience, even as they mourned their mistakes. Emily's words, urging future generations to act before it was too late, became a mantra repeated in schools, councils, and homes. One day, while visiting a settlement nestled in the foothills of a mountain range, Clara and Liam were invited to speak at a gathering. The crowd was diverse, young and old, farmers and engineers, dreamers and doers, all united by a shared purpose. As Clara stood before them, holding the shard aloft, she felt a surge of emotion. "This is more than just a piece of earth," she began, her voice steady yet filled with passion. "It's a gift, a warning, a promise. Humanity gave us their stories so we wouldn't repeat their mistakes. And because of them, we have a chance to build something better." She paused, looking around at the faces of those gathered. "We can't change the past, but we can shape the future. Every decision we make matters. Every action counts. Let's honor their memory by protecting what we have and leaving behind something worth remembering." The crowd erupted into applause, cheers echoing through the valley. Liam stepped forward, adding his own thoughts. "This isn't just about Vela," he said. "It's about all of us, about being responsible stewards of our world. If we keep listening, keep learning, there's no limit to what we can achieve." After the gathering, a young girl approached Clara, her eyes wide with wonder. She held out a small drawing, a crude but heartfelt depiction of the prototype surrounded by smiling figures. "Thank you," she said shyly, "for giving us hope." Clara knelt down, taking the drawing gently in her hands. "Thank you," she replied, her voice thick with emotion, "for reminding me why we're doing this." Years later, the effects of their efforts were undeniable. Forests that had been barren began to regrow, rivers ran clear again, and skies turned a brilliant shade of blue. The Valens, inspired by humanity's legacy, developed systems to monitor and protect their environment, ensuring that history would not repeat itself. Schools taught the story of Earth alongside their own, instilling in every generation a sense of responsibility and gratitude. Clara often found herself reflecting on the journey, from the moment Kale unearthed the artifact to the countless battles fought along the way. It had been a path filled with challenges and triumphs. Yet through it all, one thing remained constant: the belief that humanity's message mattered. On a quiet evening, long after the initial struggles had faded into memory, Clara stood alone on a hill overlooking a thriving settlement. The hum of clean energy generators filled the air, mingling with the sounds of laughter and life. In her hand, the shard glowed softly, its light undimmed by time. "Remember us?" the voice whispered once more, gentle and reassuring. Clara closed her eyes, letting the words wash over her. "We will," she murmured, "and we'll do you proud." Far above, the stars twinkled brightly, their light stretching across the vast expanse of space. Somewhere out there, perhaps other civilizations were receiving the same message. And maybe, just maybe, they too would choose to listen, to learn, to grow, and to hope. For now, though, Clara knew their task was complete. Humanity's story had found a new home, carried forward by those who refused to let it fade into silence. It was a legacy of resilience, of courage, of love for a world that had been lost, and for one that still had a chance. As the night deepened, Clara turned and walked back toward the settlement, her heart full. The road ahead would always hold challenges, but she faced it with unwavering determination. After all, the message was clear. It wasn't too late. Not for Earth, not for Vela, and not for anyone willing to fight for a better tomorrow.